Hi guys, welcome to Fife Property TV, episode 8. Today we're going to be Mullen, I'll take you from the Cooper branch, Richard Cook from the Lettings division.
Mullen.
We've got a special guest today, David Payton from Kingdom Offroad Motorcycle Club, and myself, host Jim Parker today. We're going to kick off with David just now. We're going to talk about the property market in general just after this, but we're going to have David later on, but sadly, somebody in Pittenweem has had their bike stolen, their off-road motorcycle stolen, so he's going to have to nip away and see if we can track that down, because you never know, you might catch it before it disappears to somewhere else. So we're just going to nip on and talk about Kingdom Offroad Motorcycle Club. So, morning, David, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, Jim. I'm good this morning, yeah.
Good. So, Kingdom Offroad Motorcycle Club, talk to us more about what this club is and what it does and what it's all about.
Basically, we're a kids charity and a community safety charity. So we're trying to make our community safer by providing a safe, controlled area for people who enjoy off-road motorcycling. There is barriers to becoming involved in illegal motorcycling. There's not a lot of venues, and then getting to the venues could prove particular challenges for some young people in that as well. So we can try and bridge that barrier, if you want. We provide a venue up near the back of Ballingray, where we've got a motocross track, and we also use a trials area, which is for trials bike riding, up near Strathkinnis. So.
Yeah, and I've managed to get some photos here, so we could have a look through. I mean, that's obviously the van. So if anybody sees the van, look out for David in there. And you've got some of the equipment. Are they your bikes, or are they the people in for it bikes? Or are they their bikes or yours?
Yeah, them particular bikes are our bikes. They're Yamaha TTRs 125s. They're small 4-stroke bikes. They're more for beginners. You see the orange bikes there, that's people that came along with their own bikes.
Yeah.
So we provide a bit of both. That was the BBC Scotland was up. We're on BBC Scotland this Monday coming on the 7 show, and that was focusing on women and girls. We've provided quite a lot of support and encouragement for women and girls to be getting more involved in the sport, because it is more predominantly a male sport. And we just wanted to make it more accessible to everybody. But the other stuff I was speaking about, Jim, was the community safety side of stuff. There are some, particular in this area, who will be running about the streets, the beaches, the parks, the golf courses, and just tearing the place up. And that's the last thing we want. It gives us motorcycling fraternity a bad name as well. So we try, and when we do get referrals from the police for the young people that's been involved in that, we'll kind of take them into our organisation and change their mindset, look at their values, their attitudes, and do some group work with it, make them understand why they're doing what they're doing is wrong, and give them an insight and a pathway to the sport that we have a passion for.
So how do you fund all this? I mean, where does all this money, how do you fund it? I mean, where do you get your funds from?
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes it comes to the generosity of you guys, like, local businesses, and a massive thanks to Fife Properties for the donation we got from you guys last year. And we also did a crowdfunder campaign where the general public, were very generous and seeing the good in what our charity does, particularly working with young people, but also introducing them into motorcycle mechanics, getting them learning and fixing and looking after the bike, making sure it's in safe working order. The other areas that we get funds from is like the National Lottery, the Robertson Trust, Sports Scotland, and the Bank of Scotland. So it's applying to trust funds to see if we could get funding to help and support the kind of background. The thing that, to maintain a track, we have to hire diggers in. We have to, we've got a workshop which we have to pay rent for. We've obviously got the van, which costs to keep on the road, but also the big cost to us is the motorcycles and the repairs and maintenance. Making sure that we've got fresh tyres on them, we've got good brake pads, and they're all in good working order. So parts is a big part of the bill as well. Other ways we make money is through generating income. So the members that come along and use the track, they'll pay a membership fee, and they'll also pay a daily fee to use the track on their own bikes, or where we provide coaching, on our bikes. And the coaching could be from anyone from 4-year-old up to 90-year-old, if they're fit.
Yeah, I mean, you've always invited me down for coaching. Sadly, I've still got my knee injury. I don't want to risk that. I could imagine coming off a bike and bursting my knee again. It's that'll be the end of my running and my triathlon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very, very admirable. I've said this before, about the referrals from the police. That's probably the most important point. The fact that the police will refer to you, and you will try and get these kids off on the straight and narrow, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, the program that we run is usually over 8 to 10 weeks, and it looks at, as I said, attitudes, values, and how do we change that behaviour and that mindset and make them understand. One of the group work sessions that we'll have a lady coming in, and she speaks about a tragedy that had a huge impact on her life and her family. She lost her son. Her son was involved in illegal motorcycling, driving about the streets, and now he's sadly no longer here, and it was that activity that caused, such a sad loss of life for a young person. And often it is young people, just trying to get a bit of a thrill, boredom sets in, to go out and just, get involved in illegal off-road motorcycling, when there are places that they could do it legally, but we try and change the mindset of these young people and getting them involved. And one of the programs that we run is called On the Right Track, and that's basically what we're trying to do. Get them on the right track, give them a purpose, give them a focus, and send them off in the right direction.
So how do people find out about your club then? Where do they go? I mean, where would they go? I mean, have you got a Facebook page? Have you got a website? What have you got?
Yeah, the main thing that we're using now is the Facebook page. We've got quite a good reach on that. I think we've got over 3,500 followers. So we've got, that's working for us. But we do need to do more. I mean, things like this, Jim, has certainly helped us to spread the word about what we've got and how to get involved. But it's basically going to Facebook, search for Kingdom Off-Road, or Google. We do have a website as well. It's a bit dated, but we're in the process of revamping that, and we should have a website launch within the next month, hopefully, if we get it all sorted out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you do. I mean, I keep an eye on the community pages, obviously, right throughout Fife. We've been involved in the local market, so now and again you do get people going on about off-road motorcycling, and kids are actually running riot in their area, effectively, for want of a better phrase. So that is where they can channel, contact, and actually contact yourself through the Kingdom Off-Road Motorcycle Club. I take it that's the best avenue on the Facebook page itself.
Yeah, certainly. Contact us through the Facebook page, or the telephone number is 07921 857 283. That's 07921 857 283. Pick up the phone and give us a call, and if there's anything we could do to stop that particular kind of activity, we'll certainly go out our way to try and reduce the impact it has on our local communities. But I think the local authority needs to do a bit more as well. If we enjoy football, swimming, tennis, rugby, golf, any sport, there's usually provision for them kind of activities.
That's a good point.
If you enjoy motorcycling, there's no any provision, or it's difficult to access that. So definitely the local authority and the government need to do a wee bit more as well. So it's about,
when you think about the logic, I mean, it's there's a lot of skills there involved. For somebody that gets involved in motorcycling. I mean, I grew up on motorcycles and classic minis, and I spent a lot of time stripping them down and building them back up, and carburetors, flywheels, everything involved, condenser units, fuel pumps, and that's where I kind of learnt my trade in terms of mechanics wise. But for nowadays, a lot of people just go, well, I'll have to go to the garage because I have no idea how to do this. So I mean, even for the general layman, it's a great opportunity to learn a bit of mechanics and motorcycling.
Definitely, and you know, some of the young people that are at school are a bit disengaged, but as soon as you put an engine in front of them or the motorbike, you're amazed by the skill set that these young people have. They'll strip the whole bike down and build it back up, with coaching and guidance, obviously, but their enthusiasm and the interaction that you get with them through that process is amazing, and that's the young kid that won't even pick up a pen or struggles to read and write. They'll be totally enthused and involved through that process.
That's usually the people that go into Excel later on because they've got one skill they can focus on. They become excellent as a result because they've not really got any skills in any other areas. I generally find that. You usually find that people like this end up being self-employed and they end up running their own business.
Yeah, but even other life skills and that as well. I mean, when you get into racing, you're talking about getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, packing your van the night before, getting out there in arduous weather, whether it be rain, sleet, snow, the wind. You're out there. You're the whole
the discipline.
Yeah,
the whole discipline. I mean, it's a wealth. It's a wealth. It really is something that the government and the local authority should invest in. And if anybody's watching from these areas, please look into this because it is a great resource to get people focused, to get their attention, to get. I mean, when you think about the thousands, or hundreds of thousands of pounds it goes into correction facilities and stuff like that, and it's like you can catch everybody beforehand and actually channel their energies and channel their resources way before this.
Yeah, that's kind of the approach. We've got a thought basis on what we call the 3 Ps. So there's provision of off-road motorcycles, and then policing, obviously, apprehending them and that as well, but also the prevention. So if we could stop the problem before it actually starts, then we'll be in a much better place. And I think for way too long, particularly in Leavenmouth. I mean, we've had this problem for years, Jim. Absolute years. As long as I could remember, Leavenmouth has been particularly bad, but we've never done anything about it. So if we could look at provision, prevention, and policing, hopefully we'll be able to make some kind of difference. Yeah.
Good. Okay, thanks very much for your time, David. I'm going to let you get away, but I'll post your Facebook page later on this post. For anybody that wants to speak to David individually, you've got the number. So, thanks very much, David. I appreciate your time coming along today for the show.
Thanks very much for the invite, Jim. Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah, so guys, that's unbelievable when you think about it. That's amazing.
I was just thinking there as well when he's saying, obviously, growing up and leaving myself, it has been an issue for years, way back when I was young, when you were young as well, Jim. And it is
when I was young?
Younger.
Do you know what?
I mean, it all comes back to, everybody complains about the youth tearing up the fields on their bikes and things, but there's nothing else for them to do. And if they've got somewhere like that to kind of guide them and let them enjoy the sport in monitored fashion and properly on proper tracks and things, brilliant. So yeah, well done to David for doing that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get on to the more important things of today, property and prices and where are we going with things. Morning, Phil. Thanks for watching the show. Good morning, James. Good morning, James. Thanks for watching the show and coming along. If you've got any questions, please ask. Morning, Anne-Marie. How are you today? And Phil has taken several photographs at the track for the Kingdom Offroad Motorcycle Club. Phil's a fantastic photographer. Absolutely brilliant.
Photos at the track.
Yeah, so let's talk about the property market. We're going to talk about in general about the property market, but the main focus today is should I accept an offer? All you need to know before accepting an offer itself. Yeah. Great news. Someone wants to buy your home and perhaps you've received more than one offer. You've made the step from being available to being in demand, and now it's time to decide whether an offer is a good one, the right one for you. An offer is much more than the price put forward. It can be tempting simply to go for the highest number. We've spoken about this a lot of times before, Jermaine, we'll come back to this, but it's extremely wise to look at the full picture of every offer before you receive, to ensure that you've got the best chances of going through and in the time frame that suits your plans. We often talk about this, Jimmy, don't we? It's the do you want to elaborate on that? It's not just about the money.
Yep. So I'm trying to think. In the most recent one, we had a closing date on a property in Strathmiglo. I think we actually received about 5 offers for that one. We had 2 offers around about the same number, but we had the highest offer was, I would say, considerably more for the property. Took all the offers to the client, and the highest offer was subject to something, and it had a longer date of entry because they needed to get funding in place. While the one slightly below, well, considerably below that, was a cash buy but could move quickly as possible. My client wanted to move back down to Yorkshire. So after considering the quick time frame, getting back down to Yorkshire where they wanted to relocate, to be closer to family, friends, they actually went for the cleaner offer. So they didn't have to worry about the bank approving the funding. They got the time frame to match, so they could move on with life and be happy to where they were. The offer already was considerably more, which may have helped the decision, but they did have a higher offer there. But the time frame and the cleanness of the offer made them go for the one below. Yeah. So I would say it's key to be in the correct position to try and get your offer as clean as possible. And try and be, if you can, I know it's not always as easy, but be flexible with your date of entry to suit the people that you're buying from, because you never know what their circumstances are.
Yeah. Morning, Andrea. Thanks for watching. Hi, Ruthie. Morning. I think Ruthie's going out to do some viewings today this morning for one of our properties. Yeah, Richard, do you ever have this in the lettings market where you get people, is it just purely about the rent, or is it circumstances, or what, you know?
I think, like Jimmy says, I mean, accept an offer, even if it comes to when it's buy-to-let landlords and things, when they're picking up properties for the vendor and for the buyer. It's all about the circumstances of each, and whether both the circumstances can kind of gel together to progress forward quicker than what maybe like a higher offer would be. Like Jimmy says, the highest offer isn't always just the way to go forward. It's not always the easy solution. If it helps the vendor move on quicker and reach their goal, and quicker than what a higher offer would be, then that's the right decision to make. So yeah, definitely agree with that.
I'll just say, I've mentioned that one what I was talking about was a quicker date of entry. Sometimes the people that you're accepting from need a longer date of entry as well. So sometimes circumstances could suit a longer date of entry as well. But it's key probably to ask the agent or if the owner doing the viewing. Try and figure out what the time frame is, so you can place your offer and give yourself the best chance of securing the property.
Yeah, definitely.
It's also about managing the sale really as well, because sometimes we've had it in the past where we've had an offer, but the circumstances, in other words, the entry date, for example, wasn't exactly suiting what the seller's was. So we've actually refused offer as a result of that because it didn't fit in. In other words, they wanted in within 5 or 6 weeks because they had to conclude. And the reality was they had nowhere else to go. So what we did was parked offer aside and says, look, it's fantastic. It's great offer. The price is right, but the circumstances aren't. And therefore, we waited for another person to come along. And then lo and behold, they would make a similar offer. That would be put aside. And then the next person would come along. They'd make the similar offer, but the entry date was perfect. And it all worked out. So if you're out there and you're selling and you're on the market, you don't need to accept the first offer. This is not what it's all about. It's the circumstances surrounding the offer. It's quite important as well. So offers come in all shapes and sizes, really, from all sorts of buyers and all sorts of circumstances, as we've spoken about. And for you to feel comfortable and confident in saying yes, it's up to the estate agent, that's ourselves, to clarify the finer details of every offer. From the buyer's financial position, that's important. We'll talk about that now, to any dependent sales or chains, to any other conditions or factors that could affect the progress. That's actually quite important as well, isn't it, Jimmy? The buyer's financial position.
Yeah. So whenever I try and get an offer, I try and ask what the position is. Obviously, take the offer, the number, what their position is, whether it's first-time buyer, cash, or they've accepted an offer on their own. If they do say they've accepted an offer on their own, I do always ask, what is the position below that? Do they have is their buyer a first-time buyer, or do they have the property sale? Because you need to judge the chain, because ultimately the longer the chain gets, unfortunately, the more likely it is could possibly be to fall through, because you're counting on so many people getting ducks in a row, getting funding in place, etc. And you can't, and that's out of our control. Ultimately, they've instructed us to put their property on the market because it's a big part of trust when going to put your property on the market. But when it's outside of our control, it's very reducing.
I'm always amazed at the amount of chains that we end up having to control from the very beginning. And there's maybe about 3 or 4 estate agents involved. We have nothing to do with us. And we're actually trying to sort out their house sale and make sure their vendor's sale will go through in order for our sale to go through as well. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Surely you should be looking after your own and making sure that happens. But we do find that, don't we?
I would rather not comment.
We're not asking you to name names, it's okay. But that is quite a typical pattern of behaviour, isn't it?
Yeah, my time could be a lot more productive if I wasn't ringing solicitors and then they say, no, I don't know, or I haven't spoken to them. Then I'm having to get on the phone to them, then I'm having to get on the phone to somebody else, and I spend half my day trying to make sure that this one sale is going to get through when it's meant to get through, instead of worrying about all my other clients that are needing to get their property sold. So end up spending half my time at home working.
Yeah, but I would say every single time, that's why people buy us, for our experience and our expertise. It's not just about putting your house in the market. And sorry, I got my soapbox there. So let's take a look at the things really that you need to know about any offer when you receive it, so you can decide with full confidence whether to take it or leave it. So is it really too soon? There's an interesting dilemma when you think about it for every homeowner when it comes to selling the property, where the highest priorities for people are generally the speed of sale and the sale price achieved. But the offer coming in very fast, no matter how high, can often leave somebody wondering if their home is actually underpriced. This is actually quite an interesting dilemma, isn't it? The first thing to say that it's perfectly natural to wonder if you'll receive a higher offer if you hold on for a bit longer. I talk about this, don't I? About the deal or no deal.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when if anybody out there watches Deal or No Deal, this is a classic example. You know, you've got a box presented in front of you. The banker has actually said, here you go, there's £160,000 for your house. It is an early offer. And your house is maybe valued exactly on the home report at 160,000. And you think to yourself, oh, it's an early offer. Maybe I'll get more. And then you think, well, how much more do you need? And how much more? And that's where you've got to take advice from your estate agent, really. You know, and it comes down to, are you willing to risk £5,000 more or the 160,000 for £5,000 more, if that's what you're after? You know, that's the dilemma. And it is the deal or no deal, where you open the box and you think you've got 160,000 in your hand, you're being offered it. And do you want to take that risk and wait out? But that's key. I mean, the things, what you would do really there, Jimmy, wouldn't it, would be to ask your estate agent, really, who else is interested? What's the activity so far? You know, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, all your interest should really be recorded, so you can go through previous viewers and maybe people that have interested or requested to view. So, for example, if I receive an offer, first thing I'll be doing is ringing the most latest viewer or someone that's expressed an interest and hasn't really come back to us, or they've noted their interest and unsure or need something else to fall into place. You need to ring up every single one of those before I even take the offer to the client. Because I need to, when I would take this offer to the client, I know the first thing they're going to say is, who else is interested? What other positions? What are their positions? So I need to make sure I have all the facts before taking any offer to them. So I'll ring everybody else that's interested, take their offer to them, so I can give them the most information, the most amount of information I can for them to make the correct decision and most informed decision. I
think you've had a similar thing, Richard, haven't you?
Yeah, and I think when you have this early offer, you run the risk of just thinking, oh, and maybe just taking it, but then you need to obviously consider the situation surrounding the marketing of the property, and like you say, speak to your agent, obviously us, if it's us that's dealing with it, and speak to them about what interest and other interests have been expressed. I mean, if we advise you that obviously there isn't a lot of interest, you'd be probably the best to proceed with it, then that's probably the best way to go. But like you say, it's the deal or no deal thing. I mean, you could sit on the fence and maybe hold out for an extra £5,000, but you might not get that, and then you might sit on the market for quite a while after that, rather than accepting offer in the first place. So you really need to weigh up your options and look at the bigger picture and look outside the box before just jumping in and accepting.
Yeah, I've actually seen that in the past, way in the past, where we've obviously told our clients to say, look, you know, you need to accept, you probably be best to accept the offer. No, I'm going to hold it for £2,000 more, and literally £2,000 more, and then 9 months down the road, it's like my house no sold. And it's, well, the offer was there. The key here is, though, to understand it's not that your house is at that price, it's who's there to buy it at that price. And people make decisions every single day as a buyer whether to buy or whether to not. And so you're relying on a buyer at that price point to be there at that particular point in time when you go to market. That's really what it comes down to. And if that buyer isn't there, guess what? Your house isn't going to get that price.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in your house is only worth what somebody's going to pay for it at that point in time. And I do believe that, and I advise people that as well.
Yeah, I mean, in our experience, the best buyers are usually among the first to view your property. They're the ones who are waiting in the wings for something suitable to come up and have already viewed and rejected other options. We're finding a lot of pre-launches going, you know, before it even gets to any portals or anything like that, they go straight away from Facebook. If you're not following our Facebook pages, you're missing out on huge opportunities. You spoke about it yesterday, Jimmy, didn't you? About the ones that everybody's missed out on so far. Do you remember what these ones are?
Yeah, so we've got 51 Pinkerton Road in Crail. We got 22 Kalbaki Crescent in Lucas, 3 Edenbank Road in Cooper, 4 Rosselm Cottage in Octomukti. I believe there was one more.
Yeah, effectively, all sold from social media. Never even touched the portal, and are never on the portals to this day. They never hit Rightmove, Prime Location, Zoopla, or anything like that. They got record prices from our Facebook pages and social media. And that tells us everything. This is the new television right here. This has replaced it completely. People spend most of their time on their mobile every single day. More time probably than a television now. The television has become the new radio, and the radio has become the newspapers. And it potentially is on its way out, because podcasting's taking its place. But this is where your business is now. This is where everybody focuses. And you have to have an estate agent, and make sure your estate agent has a good, proper strategy on how to maximize the potential and retarget through social media channels. And that's a whole different minefield completely, because there's cutting edge technology out there. And you guys know this because I'm in focus groups for this. There's cutting edge technology out there. Mobile experiences, for example, Facebook launched it just 2 weeks ago, and we've engaged it straight away. No one has a clue what a mobile experience is, but it's specifically designed for mobile, and it is a mini website on social media for your property itself. A carousel with photographs, a description, and a full video content as well for people to engage in. And it is very, very responsive, and it targets the person that you want. Anyway, that's me getting carried away and excited.
We were looking at the other day, and
there's a surprise.
Yeah.
So in our experience, the best buyers are the ones we're usually waiting in the wing. They're ready to go, and they're ready to offer immediately, and they see exactly what the home they want. It's also good to remember, though, that the property is, if it's correctly priced and correctly marketed, there's really no reason for it to sit around on the market. That's key as well. You know, if it's at the right price point and it's correctly marketed, there's no point. There's no reason for it to sit around long. You know, what you should be doing, though, a property below home report value initially coming on the market shouldn't be getting sold below home report. You know, if a property comes on the first time and offers are made, we're really looking for home report or above at that point in time, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think as well, if an offer's coming in and it's, like you say, if it's priced right and marketed right and you're getting an offer at that level and there isn't a great deal of other interest or any other serious interest, then you're probably best to go with the offer. Other than that, if you've got a lot of other interest, then you're probably looking at a closing date being set, because maybe the property is positioned in an area that's obviously popular, and then you're going to get a lot of interest. Places like St Andrews and East Newton things, you see that a lot. You will do that. I see you doing closing dates there quite a lot.
Closing dates, jeez, it's like every other property is a closing date or a pre-launch we've sold. It's unbelievable. Jimmy has some numbers. Jimmy, what was the numbers this week for in the East Nuke and that? Do you want to quickly nip through these numbers and tell us all about them? This is the number of transactions in the week actually come to market versus the number of properties sold in the market.
Yeah, well, firstly, just talking about closing dates and pre-launches. We had one last week, but we had done the pre-launch, and then we had a closing date after the pre-launch. So we didn't even got a closing date before it even went on the market. So that's how important it is to be following our Facebook channels. So Cooper, start off with Cooper. So in the last 7 days, six properties listed and 12 sold.
Demand clearly outstripping supply. So Cooper's a buoyant market. You know, what's the next one you'd looked at?
St Andrews, 12 listed, 6 sold.
That's not the end of the world, because every single week and month by month, St Andrews is still outperforming in terms of demand. It's maybe just a short-term blip.
Yeah, I do know personally from speaking to buyers. I've got a couple of buyers looking in St Andrews that have sold all cash, looking for properties in St Andrews, but the right one's not on yet. So just more listings to come on, and you'll probably see the numbers go up again on the sold prices there. East Nuke, 4 listed and 7 sold.
There's no surprise. East Nuke every single week, more sold. I don't understand. Wait a minute. There must be somebody must be manufacturing these properties out of nowhere, because every single week it's like there's more properties sold than there's actually coming at the market. So at some point in time there'll be absolutely no properties on the market for sale in East Nuke.
I think if you look now, there'll only be, I reckon, this is just off the top of my head, so maybe not quite, I reckon there's probably about maybe 3 or 4 available that are not sold.
Yeah.
Because the one that we sold at a pre-launch in Crail, pre-launch at a closing date. So there's one that wasn't even on the market. Lucas, Kalbaki Crescent, there's another one in the St Andrews KY16 which would have been on the market and sold. So there is more numbers out there that are, well, from us, I know, from selling through pre-launches. And what I will say is, in the East Nuke as well, there'll be another one on the sold number, because one that we listed, we've got an offer on. We just need to finalise the details for that one as well. So,
yeah, I've got another offer to negotiate over the weekend from a client from Germany. So we're going to do a deal, and I've got another offer on the table at the same time. So it's 2 people actually offered on the same property. And this is actually quite interesting, because this is exactly goes in line with what Anne-Marie says. If the property is sitting for too long, you sometimes get viewers trying to drive the price down, trying to take advantage of the situation. But that's not the case with this property. I mean, the property I'm talking about is actually sat for a wee while because it's not the right circumstances. That's all it came down to. It wasn't about the price, it was the circumstances. And now, you know, after a good couple of months, we've actually got 2 offers on the table at the same time. And now we'll start fighting it out. You know, there'll be almost potentially, it's up to us to make sure we negotiate the best price for our client. And you know, that's the point. And so go on, Jimmy, about the rest of the areas. Where were we them?
So Leven, 12 listed, 9 sold.
Yeah, okay. Leven's still a buoyant market.
Yeah. Kirkcaldy, 27 listed and 35 sold.
Yeah, Kirkcaldy was like that last week as well. You know, similar situation. The weeks before, though, it wasn't like that. It was the other way around. So the west of Fife and central Fife is actually now starting to catch up, and demand is starting to outstrip supply.
And Glenrothes, 12 listed and 10 sold.
Yeah, about similar as well. Yeah, so across the board, we're actually, the market's still quite buoyant, still quite good. And everything's still going. So, you know, if you guys want advice, more than happy to speak to us, but just go to a local estate agent. They should know everything they need to know, and you'll be able to take advice from them. So nobody actively wants their home to be rejected time after time again, but there's something about viewers and volume that gives the comfort. Perhaps it's the simple case of safety and numbers. Really, that's what it's when it's correctly priced. Nonetheless, it's the amount and the circumstances of the offer that are by far the most important factors. I mean, getting a great offer from a great buyer in a great position sometimes to be celebrated, and even so, more so if you don't have to wait too long for that to happen. But we know, you know, even though you're getting that to happen, you know, everything's getting delayed because everybody's working from home. We discussed it in last week's programme. You know, everything's slowing down because solicitors, even the land registry it closes on the 18th of December. So if you're sold now and you're wanting an entry date before Christmas, you have not got a Scooby. You've got no chance. That's not going to happen, because there's no way everybody's going to be pulling out the stops. And somebody actually said to me, even if I've got a cash buyer, very unlikely. I mean, somebody could come round and take it and give it to you in cash right now. But the problem is, it's the bureaucracy behind it. It's the conveyancing. It's the solicitor that has to do all the back and forward with the other solicitor. It's the negotiation that go for the finer details. It's the fact that you might have a strip of land which doesn't reflect the actual land on the title. And that has to be rectified as well. So we found that recently, and we've been able to resolve that for clients and actually resurrect a sale as a result of that, and make sure it still went through, even though the client was actually saying, I've had enough. I just can't take it anymore. My solicitor's driving me crazy. and I've actually stepped in and sorted it all out and put it all in place, so it all actually got back on track. You know, I mean, that's maybe what you've just touched on, Jimmy. Not to decry solicitors today. So if you're a solicitor, please don't take this the wrong way. You know, we know your job is extremely hard. It is immense detail, it is expertise, and it is complete professionalism. And that's why you use a solicitor to do your conveyancing, and you don't try to do it yourself. But have you had a similar experience, Jimmy?
Yeah, it's very difficult because sometimes they don't like me getting involved, but ultimately, if my clients getting frustrated, I need to try and put their mind at ease, because let's be honest, 99% of people that have got their property on the market, this is their biggest asset, this is their life into their property, so they need to get updated, they need to know exactly where it's standing. So sometimes I do have to take it into my own hands, because ultimately my client's the most important person in the whole process. So
do you find that as well, Richard?
Yeah, of course. And I mean, it's not just down to solicitors. I mean, obviously they do a brilliant job, but because of the circumstances we're in now, in the situation, and things like you're saying about the land registry and things as well, as we approach the end of the year, unfortunately, a settlement's going to push through into the new year now, and that's just the way it is. And because they obviously, like you say, the bureaucracy and everything behind a sale that needs to obviously be done before it could obviously conclude. So.
Yeah, so the key here is the offer enough? That's one of the things you've got to think about when you get this. It might be the most basic of all questions relating to an offer, but the price is certainly the one that will raise the most emotion out of this. Whether disappointment, doubt, or even delight. You know, we get a lot of delight, don't we? I love delight. Exceeding people's expectations, that's what drives me forward. It's very rare for a buyer to put their best foot forward first, so don't be offended about the initial bid, as the lower is lower than you actually hoped for. Everything is a negotiation, and your estate agent is there to assist you in getting the offer increased. This is where the skill of an estate agent lies. So a few simple questions can help you make the right decision. Does the offer fall within the range of values you were given when you initially spoke to your estate agent? Does the offer reflect the valuation in the home report? Does the offer reflect the prices that similar nearby homes are selling for today? Is anyone else expressing an interest in your property? We've just touched on that. If you've only been on the market for a very short while, you shouldn't need to accept an offer much lower than your asking price if your price you're marketed on is realistic in the first place. But if you've been in the market for a long time, it could be down to your asking price being too high. If the offer fits with other local sales, perhaps now is the time to go with the actual evidence. We have actually seen that, haven't we?
Yeah, I think as you say that as well, I mean, it's all about managing expectation, but it's also about following through on what you've obviously said to a client you're going to provide them, and follow through on that. And like you say, setting the right price point in terms of valuation along with the surveyor and things as well. So yeah.
Yeah, what I would say is when your agent comes out and does the initial valuation, my question I'll always ask is, how much are you expecting the property to be worth, or how much are you hoping to achieve before I even come through the door? Because I need to know what their expectations are. Whether sometimes it's going to be good news, or unfortunately sometimes it is bad news. But your agent should be come along giving you comparable evidence. So if you, let's just say, for example, I've been to clients that they're expecting 150, but I'm actually thinking the comparable sales to say 170. We go to market and they get an offer of 170, but they're wanting now 180. But then I have to tell them, look, when we first come out here, you're expecting 150. the value's come in at 170. Now's not the time to be greedy. You get 20 grand more than what you actually first initial thought it was. This is allowing you to get to the next step of your life that you want to move on. If there's no interest there, but sometimes there's more interest, then we can push and negotiate for more. But it's key that sometimes people are a bit hesitant, saying, why do you need to answer all these questions? Why do you need to get all these information? I just want my house valued and want to get it on the market. But it's not as simple as that. We need to get all the information for you, because ultimately I'm here to help you move on with your life, get to where you want to be happy, and get you the best price. So there's reasons behind every question.
You've hit the nail on the head, Jimmy. Often, sometimes, I wouldn't say often, but now and again, I go out to see a customer and I say, well, what are your expectations and valuation? And they go, well, what are your expectations? That's what you're here for. And I'm like, it's not a competition. It's not as if I can hit your mark. It's nothing to do with that at all. It's the fact that I'm here to help you achieve what you want to achieve. So I'm just kind of managing your expectations, because there's sometimes I've walked into one person's house in the past and said, it's probably about 350,000. And they go, oh, I was expecting 500,000. And I'm like, well, all the evidence is right in front of me with everything that's sold, next door, up the street, round the corner, all similar types of house types. They've all sold for about 350,000. So there's no way a surveyor's going to come in and say it's worth 500,000. It's impossible. They are bound. And that's when we spoke about home report versus market value last week. The fact that home report is based on historical information. It's belts and braces. That's the price because your one next door sold for, and it's similar to yours, and round the corner sold, and it's similar to yours right now. So that is the price. Market value is a completely different market, a completely different proposition. Market value is what we're after. That's why you employ an estate agent. That's why you get an estate agent through the door, to achieve market value, not home report value. If you've got an estate agent focused on getting home report value, I would argue you've got the wrong person in front of you. Your estate agent is there to drive the price beyond home report value.
I think.
Sorry, Richard.
To touch on what you were saying, Jimmy, I mean, a lot of the skill with an agent lies in negotiation. And in order to be able to negotiate to the best of your ability, you need as much information as you can from the client. So if they hold back or don't, obviously, if they're kind of withholding information for you and expect you to provide all the answers, we really can't do that. We need the information for them to negotiate the best and ultimately get them the result that they want. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, we can't control home report value, but we're bringing the evidence to people to show them where the home report value is expected to come in for. If the home report value is lower than what you were expecting, then ultimately it's up to you to choose the right agent that's going to show you what she's demonstrating to you to get seen by the widest possible audience. Because ultimately, how are you going to drive the price up is getting competition in your property and getting the most amount of people through the door. So
I'm laughing at we can't control home report value. And I was last week I was texting David Marr and I was going, I've got this for that property, I've got this for that property, and I've got that. And he says, my goodness, he says, I can't believe it. You're setting new price bandings. You're setting new record price bandings for the properties in the East Newton St Andrews area. He says he couldn't believe what we're getting for property. But the important thing for us is we feed that back to him straight away. So then he realigns it and says, well, we've got compelling evidence straight away that actually these properties are worth a lot more now. So therefore the home report should reflect a lot higher value.
Exactly. So, well, it's key relaying and having an expert like David, so we can relay the correct information and accurate information to the clients, because we want to be transparent with them and build a relationship and a trust. So they know when we're giving them good or bad news, it's the truth, and it's not.
That's where it's key to have even have your surveyors actually have a good level of expertise. I mean, Paul Duncan as well covers the Leven, Kirkcaldy and Glen Office areas, and Paul has actually, I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day about Paul Duncan at Shepherd's. His pedigrees, Graham and Sibbald and Hardy's. Before that, Paul's been in this for years.
Yeah.
I didn't even remember when he started during the war, like me. And David's been in this for years as well. I mean, I've never known anybody different but dealing with David. So David Marr's, and David Marr lives locally anyway, so he knows what goes on in the area and he knows what happens. So it's key actually to have a surveyor that you can work with on a good footing, so you can both come to an agreement about where the property price lies, because we're doing exactly the same. He had said on the first show actually we had David on, he had said, well, the valuation process, we're doing exactly the same thing as him.
Yeah. Sometimes there's obviously rural ones where he might have more information than us on terms of mortgage valuations, etc. But that's where you need a relationship with him. Just try and chat with him what his expectations are. There, I know he's not seen it, but he will know. I can relay the accommodation to him, etc., and he can have a look in a more details on his base and know where we're at.
So the next one of your offers to consider is, are there any strings attached? Many people have grand plans for their next home, but it's important for you to know whether their offer depends on obtaining permission or estimates that will conclude missives. Basically agree legality to purchase the property. But if your buyer wants to add an extension, convert a loft, remove some walls, or reconfigure any aspect of your property, they need consent to do so. Many people will happily seek that after completing the sale, if structural work is considered unusual, and they have already budgeted for their expense involved. But if the works they intended to do on a bigger scale, or if your property is in a conservation area, your buyer may not want to risk it before either checking with a local authority or speaking to a builder or waiting until full planning permission is granted. So getting the clear from the outset is key. This is key when you think about it. You know, you often get, well, the entry date's perfect, the price is perfect, and then they sneak something through at the last minute. And it's like, wait a minute. You never told me you had a house to sell when I actually asked you. You never told me you wanted planning permission to pass on an extension before I actually asked you. You never said you wanted, you know. So when we discuss the heads of terms, which is effectively part of the major part of the negotiations, the key points, you know, we do ask things like that, but often you sometimes get the solicitor, there we go, sort of beating the solicitors again, off we get at the last minute. I think it's because what happens is they use a standard offer template. It's put down and prescribed by the Law Society. So they actually just put that forward. And then after that, what happens between the two solicitors, they actually delete clauses, you know, and they say delete 5, 6, and 8, delete 14, 15, and 16, include this one, include that one. So that's what they do from there. They have a standard template they put forward. So you actually have to watch out for these conditional points coming in. You know, the typical ones is conditional upon a survey being done to which the buyer will be satisfied. And it's like, well, wait a minute, there's been a home report done. That's the survey. So why would you not be satisfied? But they still leave it in there, don't they?
Yeah, I've learned a lot about offer letters over the years. I mean, Jim, I used to do a lot of the corporate ones and things and do a lot of closings with multiple offers, and it was all about if there's clauses coming and being taken out, and yeah, so offers, they do come as a template initially, and then they need to be obviously tweaked. So yeah, Jim, you see that as well.
Frustrating sometimes, because when you're trying to relay this to a client, member of the public, they don't understand what it means, and then you have to spend half your time explaining the details to them. It's like
that's key, but that's a key process why people buy our experience as well, because when you're explaining to them, it's easy for us to communicate with a buyer and a seller exactly where things are and why you need to do in a particular way in order to get that through and get that process done. You know, I think that's the key skills that estate agents need to have in order to do that. Again, I'm coming back to saying it's know how quick you do, and if you've got all the properties in the area. You know, the biggest estate agent in the area is not necessarily the most skilled estate agent in the area. They're maybe just big because they've got they do volume and they do cheapest chips and they'll just bust everything through the door. You know, and some will fall out and you know, they've not got time to pick them up, but they get the majority of the sales, which actually pushes them forward. So again, coming back to saying time frame can also be a condition of the sale, whether fast or slow. So check with your buyers when they would like to complete, and make sure their hopes and expectations fit in with your own. And that's initially done at the beginning. So do they want to move in a time for a new school term, for example? So this is key for we're advising people watching the show. You know, check with your buyers, because you know you're obviously not everybody's going to use us. That's fine. That's okay. Your own choices. But this is key things that you'll need to know yourself for the estate agent that you're using to make sure that the process is right. And also, if you try to do online estate agents, so you try to do it yourself, this is key as well. So this article will help a lot of people, not necessarily people that are with us. So do they want to move in a time for a new school term, or wait until the end of the school year before taking children out of their existing school? Does the work relocation have a date that needs to be met? Are there any other factors that could affect the speed of this transaction? So again, that's things you've got to work out as well. Other things as well, is it cash or is it a mortgage? That's what you need to ask your buyer. Not everyone is entirely clear what cash actually means. We've been, this is in the past, and what a cash buyer isn't necessarily faster than someone actually getting a mortgage. You know, you're saying, you're nodding your head there straight away, Jimmy. Go and elaborate on that. Cash buyer. I'm a cash buyer.
People say I'm a cash buyer, but what they're not saying is they need to sell their existing property to have the cash in the bank. So they've not got the cash in the bank, so they're not a cash buyer.
Also, other people think that they're cash buyers just because they've got a mortgage in place. They actually think because they've got a mortgage in place, they've sold their property. So I've got a mortgage in place and I've got a deposit, so I'm a cash buyer. Well, you're not technically a cash buyer in real terms. Cash buyer means money in the bank, ready to go. Mortgage means cash buyer with mortgage is a cash buyer with mortgage. So make sure that when you're communicating your offer, that you make sure the estate agent knows that you're a cash buyer, but you have a mortgage to go with that. You just don't have anything to sell. So it's key for your estate agent as well. Advice for estate agents out there. It's key for estate agents out there that you make sure that your client is either a cash buyer, cash in the bank, they're ready to go, they're in rented accommodation, a cash and mortgage buyer, in other words, cash in the bank, they've still got a mortgage to arrange because that will slow down the process, or they've got a house, they've got cash for a deposit, their house is under offer. And again, that's what you say, Jimmy. You know, their house is under offer, but they actually think that they're a cash buyer. Well, you're not. You have to make sure you tell and communicate that your house is under offer and you've got the deposit and the mortgage is in place. So it's key to understand these processes because that could have a knock-on implication to your seller, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why you need to ask. Well, that's the reason you ask all these questions in the start, so you can relay the correct information to them, and that's why you need, when the offer comes in, you need to be asking as many questions as you can to the solicitor to get the right information to the seller, so they can make the best decision for them. And it's pretty straightforward, really. You just got to ask all the questions.
Well, I'll say the phrase, Jimmy. You think it's common sense, but the problem about common sense, it's no that common.
No.
Yeah. Sometimes I will say sometimes the solicitors don't relay the correct information to you, and sometimes the stuff out of the solicitor's control change and ultimately affect the sale. So obviously we can't control that. But if you have asked all the questions and relayed the correct information to your seller, that is you've done your job and you've done all you can.
It's key to have a good relationship with the solicitor, really, because and have that open communication all the time to make sure that because you know yourself. Once it passes to solicitor, our process is we always communicate with the solicitor from then on to make sure there's nothing missed out in the transaction and there's no detail missed out that the solicitor needs to be aware of. Because often what I've heard in the past that an estate agent communicates with their seller or their buyer individually and agrees something which the solicitor has no comprehension about. So when they go to make the offer, and this is from people buying our properties, they then don't have that communication. They then miss out that key information, and that then sometimes puts things back a bit. So the key is to make sure you communicate through your solicitor all the time where they're involved. Yeah,
totally agree.
And that keeps the chain of events. I mean, Phil says a crystal ball. Often I think I've got to have a crystal ball to find out what happens sometimes. So this is the key. I mean, the article we've put on here anyway, we'll elaborate this in more detail. So what is a cash purchaser? So receiving an offer from a cash purchaser with no dependent sale is everyone's dream because it removes at least 2 potential delays, the mortgage process, and no chain. Most people understand that cash offer means that there's no mortgage involved, but some buyers think that there's cash purchasers. But if they simply have a deposit in the bank, they're even bothering the rest. So that's the first question an estate agent really needs to ask, just exactly what we said. Assuming there's an offer of 100% cash, your buyer should prove proof of these funds. You know, that's another thing. You know, it's all right, but you really need to prove proof of these funds if you're a 100% cash buyer. Either by supplying bank statements or a letter from the solicitor confirming the position. I would always say to people, look, just provide a letter from your solicitor. I'm not keen on asking people to provide their bank statements to put as proof. Go through your solicitor and make sure your solicitor verifies that for you. Because let's be honest, there is no real major licensed regulated regulations for estate agents. You know, any man and their dog could start up as an estate agent. And I'm very nervous about that process. So that's why I advise anybody, if you're needing to prove anything, prove it to your solicitor and get your solicitor to prove it to the estate agent, because you don't want to share your bank statements with anybody other than your solicitor. Okay. So sometimes the cash can be coming in from another sale, effectively placing you in a chain. You know, we've spoken about that. Your estate agent speak to your selling agent of that property and confirm these details. And again, we've spoken about that as well. So mortgage purchases. Most people buying their next home take out a mortgage, but not everyone looking for a property has all the arrangements in place, or either even confirmed if they can borrow. If your buyer already has a mortgage agreement in principle, it's a good sign. I mean, often we get people not actually coming along to us and saying, you know, they've not even got their mortgage in place, or they've not even spoken to an advisor. And I'm thinking, well, how do you know how much you can afford?
Yeah.
They don't.
Aye, that's it. They don't. So we often have to then say, look, you know, we're going to put you in touch with Neil Bird, or we're going to put you in touch with Kessa from Cara or Freedom, and they'll make sure that you're actually in a position to proceed, and you've actually, before we actually introduce you to our sellers. Because, you know, the worst thing in the world for me is to have someone walk around the property and then announce to the seller they've not actually got any finance in place, they've still got a house to sell, and the seller's standing there sitting, I've just tidied up my whole house. And I've sorted everything out, and I've put myself out for this viewing today, and you're not in a position to proceed.
Yeah.
Now that's frustrating.
Yeah, very, very.
Yeah, we've all seen that happen, and you know, you try to protect that downside all the time, but now and again, you're just not told the full story. But it's key for your estate to make sure that happens. Richard, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think obviously. I think the advice obviously somebody, if a buyer, if they're going to be purchasing a property, is to, like you say, make sure speak to a solicitor, speak to a mortgage advisor, be in a position to move, because, and especially now the market's, I mean, the turnaround's so quick at the minute. If you're not in a position to move, then you're wasting everybody's time. You're wasting your own time as well. You need to be in that position to move forward if you like a property and you want to put an offer down. So yeah. And I mean, like you say, you've got people walking around the property and you've asked all the questions. And then it transpires at the end, oh, well, I've not spoke to my mortgage advisor yet, or, you know, and it just delays everything, or just kind of kiboshes the whole thing.
I mean, key as well is finding out what percentage of the purchase price has actually been borrowed. You know, because, I mean, immediately we know you can only get 85% loan to value mortgages just now. It's very, very rare you can get actually 90%. So if somebody comes along and straight away and says, I've got a 5% deposit, you're going, you've got no chance. Yeah. There is no one doing 95% mortgage out there. There's virtually hardly anybody doing 90% of anything, maybe two products. And all the lenders are actually 85%. So unless you've got that, there's no point. So that's the importance of making sure that you're a stage and asks these questions. You know, that's really what it is. So finding out the percentage of the purchase price that's been borrowed can help you decide between two or more offers. The lower the amount being borrowed, the less dependency there is on the mortgage valuation. This can also be important if you've achieved an unexpectedly high price and set a new level for your street. I love doing that. Again, you need confirming that your deposit monies are in place and readily available. If your buyer is receiving a gift and from the remortgaging of their parents' properties, for example, I mean, that does actually take time, or releasing their funds from other one they own themselves, your sale will become dependent on these loans becoming available. Now, I know this because I've personally done this for my children, where you actually, you know, you have to go through a whole rigmarole to prove it actually where the money is coming from to actually gift it to your children. What can I know? Just put it in their bank, and that's the end.
Money laundering and things. Yeah.
Aye, money laundering slowed everything down completely. And let's be honest, money laundering doesn't catch the people money laundering. It only penalises the people actually following the rules.
But it does delay things with a sale if it's like obviously a gift for parents or things, because obviously all the checks need to be done by the solicitor and verify where the money is actually coming from. It can't just appear in your bank.
Yeah, and these are not unusual circumstances, not necessarily problems, but neither do they need to actually be surprises in the whole transaction. That's really what it's come down to. So this is where we talk about your bit, Jimmy. You spoke about at the beginning. Is there a chain? Jeez. It's almost like when you hear there's a chain, you then think, how deep is this chain? And how much work do I have to do to make sure everything happens? And how much work do I have to do for every other estate agent?
Yeah, it's tough because a lot of people do need to sell to be able to buy their next home. So not everybody's in a fortunate position to buy cash. So to find out how deep the chain is and whether they've got their funding in place and when their key one is when their date of entry is expected and have they concluded missives. So we've had a couple of times where we haven't accepted offer because the property's been very popular because the people making the offer haven't quite concluded on their property yet. Once you conclude it, come back to us so I can safely and we can know security of our client being able to go ahead and look for their next purchase. So just got to make sure you're asking all the questions, how deep the chain is, when the date of entry is, when the concluded missives, and one key question is how quickly can they sign missives on our property or the seller's property, because we want to tie them into the deal as quickly as possible so my client can go ahead and look freely knowing that their property is actually going to go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's the key here is to make sure that if you're an estate agent out there, please make sure that your client's sale is in progress and everything's in perfect synchronization and harmony, and keep up to date with the estate agent that they're buying their house from, and potentially the estate agent that they're selling their house to. The same process. The communication is key here to make sure this all happens. I mean, a chain, just so everybody understands, a chain is a series of connected sales with each property a link. They're a normal part of moving home and can be really short with just two properties, or they could be quite long and weave their way across the nation. We have English buyers, don't we? And English sellers and that down south. So chains are not necessarily something to be frightened of. And it's perfectly possible that a chain of 7 or 8 sales could proceed with 0 problems. I doubt that. Just as it's possible for a chain fee sale to encounter a delay. It does happen sometimes, doesn't it? Where everything goes through perfectly and everything still falls in place. But you are relying on the probability of that person has to do it, that person has to do it, that person has to do it. And almost because everything's on mortgage, everybody's got to move on the same day. So it's almost like a marathon set in the morning where 8 o'clock, when everybody opens and they're ready to go, the money's ready in place, the keys exchanged, the next person, the next person, the next person, the next person. And by the time you've got to make sure that sometimes we've actually had people saying, could I just pick my keys up on the Saturday? Because the solicitor phones us or we get an email about, 5 to 5 on Friday night. And so this is key, where sometimes you're better actually to have your move-in dates on a Thursday. Everybody aims for the Friday, and the problem is sometimes if it doesn't go according to plan, you've got the weekend to contend with. And let's be honest, everybody else is shut. That's what it comes down to. I mean, just a couple of weekends ago, was it yourself, Richard, that ran down the office to hand out keys for a property to make sure the person, because they are coming on here. They hadn't even agreed with us that they were coming, but they'd basically come across and says, "Oh, we just thought you'd be open and you'd be able to give us the keys." And it's like, well, you would prearrange that, surely, but it didn't happen. So we made sure we actually popped down to the office and gave them the keys and made sure they got into their home. But they left them themselves in a precarious position, really. Yeah.
The key here as well, by moving on a Friday, if one sale breaks down, if you're in a chain, let's just say, you don't even need have to be in a chain. If something isn't quite ticked, or box isn't quite ticked, solicitors aren't open on the weekend.
Yeah.
So if you organise your movals for Friday, you're not moving Friday, you're not moving Saturday, you're not moving Saturday, and then they're going to have a lot more stuff on their desk on a Monday. So you probably won't even move on a Monday. So you're probably really even looking at the Tuesday. So yeah, it's key to make sure everything's in line and trying not to get it on Friday.
Get a cardboard box prepared.
Yeah.
I think that's what he's saying. Nonetheless, the more sales your move depends on, the more potential exists for delays and problems that are outside your control. So it's essential to check every sale in the chain for its progress to date and for any existing possible hitches. A big part of a estate agency is liaising with other agents up and down the country to stay informed on the chains that they're involved in. And we've just spoken about that. So remember, the success and the speed of your sale will depend on every other property in the chain. You know, basically the slowest person will determine the speed. And nobody exchanges contracts until the slowest sale in the chain is ready to go. This avoids a sale falling through after others have exchanged contracts, which could leave people open to penalties if they're unable to complete. So that's key here, why the slowest one in the chain will actually determine how the speed everybody else goes. Because if everybody else completes and this one falls through, then you're going to have penalties. You know, and that's where your solicitor's key in actually picking that up and making sure that moves forward. So if your move depends on a particular deadline, it's vital to know exactly where the chain is at that point before you actually commit to the offer itself. Yeah, I mean, that's key, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because there's let's just say there's the chain of 3 and there's a first time buyer at the start. Ultimately, until the money's in the bank or to the mortgages, the funding is available from the mortgage, they won't conclude missives. But sometimes I even hear solicitors saying, we're just waiting for the funding to be approved, then we'll conclude missives and we'll exchange on the same day. What happens if it all goes wrong?
My phrase I always remembered as a financial controller and financial director, there's no profit until the money's in the bank. That's really what it comes down to. Nothing. It doesn't matter if you conclude missives or you do anything else, or you exchange contracts or whatever it's called. It's never a done deal until the money appears in your bank. So
yeah, it's frightening, some of the things you hear. But if you just need to be just pestering everybody involved to make sure you're getting the correct information. It's so they may get annoyed, but ultimately you need to be selfish in these circumstances. Yeah,
our job is to make it happen. That's ultimately it. That is our job. That's what we rely on. Make it happen, and not watch it happen. Actually, make it happen.
You need to frustrate everybody involved to get things moving forward. Or everybody just kind of idly lets things go along, and that doesn't work.
So having all these points answered will give you peace of mind to need to accept an offer with confidence and without a later regret. You should never feel pressured into accepting an offer. This is key here. You should never feel pressured into accepting an offer that doesn't satisfy the questions that we've just posed before in this show. So feel free to challenge any advice that doesn't feel right or doesn't fit with what you're thinking. There's nothing wrong with that. As a seller or as a buyer, it's key to get the right advice. So don't always take somebody's word for it. Ask the question. Questions are good. It leads to answers, which leads to resolutions.
Yeah, we had an offer on yesterday, actually. It was from a lady selling in Edinburgh. She'd accepted an offer on her property, date of entry the 14th of December. So I went to the solicitor, I got the offer. I said, right, when's the date of entry for her property? 14th of December. Missives haven't concluded. Okay. What's happening there? Funding's just been approved by the buyer, so I've just issued a Q&A. I said, okay, so how quickly are we looking to conclude missives? She said, well, should be next week. So okay, would you be able to conclude missives on our on the forward purchase within 2 weeks? She said, yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. So I said, okay, I'll take that to my client. So we took it to the client. Happy to accept the offer, but missives has to be concluded in the 2 weeks' time.
Yeah,
and we just go from there.
And if that doesn't, then we'll have to reassess the situation.
Yeah, exactly. If it's not done, then if it's not done, then we'll either put it back on the market, or my client may give them a bit of leeway if they're feeling generous.
Yeah, I mean, the key here is, are you concerned about an offer you've received on your property, or are you getting less interest than you actually accepted or you'd hoped for? And if anybody would like to talk about it, feel free to get in touch with us, or contact us by email or message us here or anything like that. I mean, guys, that is over an hour already. You know, that's just flown in. Richard, you never even had a chance to do your market roundup on the rentals.
Just
listen, we'll get you one time, eh? The one time you're off, we'll round up the rentals market.
Yeah, we'll get to it eventually.
Any final questions on advice that you would say to anybody out there, Jimmy?
Just keep talking to everybody involved in your sale. You need transparency, not only for your sale, but for your purchaser, because they're going through exactly the same process. So if you hide the information from them, how would you feel if they was doing that if your purchaser was doing that to you? It's not fair, and you want everything to go smoothly. So you just need to be honest and get as much information as you can, and speak to everybody involved so you can move forward.
Yeah, Richard, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think we touched on it obviously earlier on. I think a really important thing is, if you are going to be selling your property and you're meeting with an agent, to be as transparent and honest and upfront about what your expectation is, what you want your end result to be, to then allow obviously us as agents to negotiate the right offer and accept the right deal that you need to move forward as well. But that's really important, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect roundup to the show.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for everybody else watching, guys. Really appreciate watching the show. Take part, comment, like, share, do what you need to do. We actually love it. You guys taking part in the show. Yeah. Phil, James, Ruthie, Andrea, Anne Marie. Guys, thank you very much for taking part, and we'll see you next week at 9:30 for the next Fife Property show.
Good.